The following screencast covers the functionality of Iris Web. Iris is a debt collection application used by agencies to manage debt collection jobs. Iris Web is the web interface into that system. Typically, an Iris Web will be available on the Iris Web subdirectory of a website. In this example, I'll be using an internal web server, but this particular section of the browser URL or address bar will be replaced by a website for the agency in question. Once Iris Web has been displayed in the browser, you'll be presented with a login screen. In this screencast, we're using Internet Explorer 7 as an example. Iris Web is supported on Internet Explorer 6 and Firefox 2. The Internet Explorer 6 support is limited in terms of the graphic display functionality of that particular browser version, as it doesn't support transparencies in colors. So the look and feel of Iris Web on IE6 basically isn't as good as IE7 or Firefox 2 and later browsers. When you're presented with the login screen, you would have previously had to have been assigned a username and password. So I'm going to log in as, say, LucyV, the username, and I'm going to type in an erroneous password first up. And when you type in an incorrect password, you get an indication that the login attempt failed. Subsequent attempts on the password will slow down the cycle of login attempts. So if I try again with another incorrect password, it'll take longer for the login attempt to fail. I'll just keep doing it just to get a bit of a feel for it. So there, see how the buttons grayed out? That's to prevent attempts to guess passwords. The more you try to log in with an incorrect password, the longer and longer it takes until it effectively becomes unusable. Now I'll log in as LucyV. LucyV is a client contact for jobs within this agency's website. And when any Iris Web user logs in, they're first presented with the announcement screen. The announcements are displayed in the center here. There is a series of menu bars for the Iris Web application. These are specific to Iris Web and aren't related to the browser menu bars. And in addition, there's a series of toolbar buttons that match the menu bar options. As you'll notice, some of the icons are grayed out. This means they'll perform no action in the current context, so it doesn't make sense for them to be pressed given the current screen. And the menu bar options are basically mirrors of the toolbar options. Okay, the announcements display shows one row per announcement, and there'll be typically things like system maintenance indications, say that the database is going to go down over the weekend for maintenance, or there's been an upgrade of the software functionality. In the examples here, there's 4 different version upgrade announcements for Iris Web versions and Iris Windows versions. It's good to get into the habit, if you're an Iris Web user, to have a look into an announcement if you haven't read it before, because it can contain useful information in relation to your use of the system. Just then I double clicked on a row, and that went into the detail for that particular announcement, and it shows you the time the announcement was made, a title for the announcement, and the announcement details. In this particular version, this particular announcement, it describes an Iris Windows version release, the changes made in the release, and some known existing issues. Once you've finished with reading the detailed announcement, you can choose to go back to the announcements grid by clicking the Show All button, and then choose to double click on, say, another announcement to read it. This pattern of a grid and double clicking to see the detail is used in a number of areas within the Iris Web user interface. Now, on the left side of the Iris Web window are a series of Outlook style tabs, and there's a section for operations and a section for admin. These sections are specific to logging in as a client contact. If you log in as a different type of user within the system, you'll get different tabs and different application options. The various roles in the Iris system include coordinators, which coordinate jobs, managers, which manage a debt collection agency, clients, which represent organisations that the agency performs debt collection jobs for, client contacts, which represent people within the client organisation, agents, that are field agents that act on the jobs, and administrators, which administrate the system. So I'll flip back to the Operations tab, and for client contacts logging in, Lucy Voigt is a client contact. Client contacts see the Operations tab and the Admin tab. Within Operations, they can have a look at their current jobs. I've just clicked on jobs, and it provides a grid of all the jobs that particular client contact is managing in relation to the debt collection agency. The jobs are displayed in a grid, and as with the announcements, you can double click on an item in the grid to display the details of that particular job. If I then click on jobs again, it'll display the grid again, but you notice here on the left it's added another entry for the job that's just been visited. In this way you could say select a series of jobs to operate on during the day or during a short period, and then quickly flip between them. The entries within the Operations tab, it almost acts like a window list, where the window is this section in the middle here. You can also close down a window by pressing, or a sub window, by pressing this little cross on the top right. So I'm going to close this job 445709, and it'll be removed from the window list. Of course, I can go back to the jobs grid and select it again if required. In addition to the jobs entry, which displays the jobs grid, there's a find job option. Here you can type in any piece of information related to a job. Just going to see if there's any. John's a common name, so I'm just searching to see if there's any Johns. No. What I'm going to do is flip back to the jobs grid just to give you an indication. And there's a bill there. I'll flick to find job and type in bill. So this search functionality works searches within the jobs that the user that's logged in is authorized to view. So searching for bill shows me that there are two jobs where bill is mentioned somewhere in the job. The actual search fields are not the entire contents of the job. There's certain sections such as various names, contract numbers, job numbers, etc. So the word bill must appear in this second job at some location. So I'll just double click on it and have a quick flick through the borrowers list. Okay, there's a Bill Bloom in this particular job, and that's why the find job request found both these two jobs for Bill Yeager and Bill Bloom. Okay. Now the admin tab also has another set of entries that typically won't be entered into during normal operations for a client contact logging into Iris Web, but they may be useful in different scenarios. So the announcements, you can go back to the announcements grid if you needed to look at the announcements past the initial login phase. There's a My Settings tab, which defines all the settings related to the currently logged in user. Their name, a short name, date of birth if needed. Now, this style of interface for defining a person is used throughout Iris Web. It provides a consistency and a way to reuse software for defining any person that's referenced by the Iris database. Now, there's different tabs per person. The common tabs are the contact tabs, which defines how to contact that particular person, in this case yourself who's logged in. Identification information, which isn't really needed for a client contact, but would be needed, say, for defining a borrower or a defendant. But more importantly, the definition of what username you log in as and your password. You can change your password at any time by typing a new password in twice and pressing the change button. Finally, there's an entry called log within the admin tab. This is purely maintenance style support information that defines what database actions have been performed by the currently logged in user during the session. Normal users don't typically need to have a look at this tab unless they're interacting with an Iris support person to find out, to resolve a problem or whatever. So what you could do is select the entire log, copy it, and then paste it into an email and send it to the support person on request. Most of the time, however, users will pretty much stay in the operations tab. Okay, so going back to the jobs grid, every jobs grid has a combo for a viewpoint. Being that Lucy is a client contact, the only viewpoint that she is authorized to have within the system is to be a client contact. The available viewpoints differ depending on the role you log in as. For example, an administrator of the system can view the system from the perspective of both agents, clients, managers, and coordinators, and that helps in an administrator doing the work they need to do. But client contacts can only view jobs as a client contact. Now, Lucy is a client contact for a client that is not configured to share jobs amongst their finance officers. So she can only look at her own jobs. In addition, you can choose to look at jobs with no tasks. So this particular job has no current tasks and sort of makes sense since it's closed. And within the grid, there are various columns. Most of them are fairly obvious, like the job number, which is the internal Iris job number, the region that the job was logged and associated with, the current status of the job. For client contacts, only active and closed, let's have a look, active and closed jobs appear in the list. You can page through the jobs by the controls down the bottom. This shows that there's 6 pages of jobs, and we're at page 1. Just pressing the right arrow goes to the next page, and you'll notice that the jobs have different background colors depending on their state. And a green job indicates that it's closed. A yellow job indicates that the days since the job has been logged has exceeded 30 days, exceeded or equaled 30 days. And finally, let's find some. Orange job is greater than or equal to 60 days, and red jobs are greater than or equal to 90 days. The double arrows indicate going to the beginning of the jobs or the end of the job list. The most typically important fields associated with each job are displayed in the initial columns, but you can view other columns by using the horizontal scroll bar. At the time of this screencast, there's an existing fault where the scrolling with the horizontal scroll bar didn't scroll the column headers. We'll be looking to resolve that issue in due course. But the sort of additional columns you can view include what type of job. In this case, most of these are repossession jobs, and different job states. Now, if you click on a column header, you can instruct the jobs grid to display the jobs in the order of that column. So I've just clicked on region, and it sorted it from Z to A. If I click it again, it reverses the sort, so from A to Z. So for example, if we wanted to group information or order information via the financier's contract number, just click on the contract column header. Okay, so now I'll just sort back on the internal job number. Most of the Iris Web usage time will be spent within each jobs that are being managed by the client contact. So let's go to the detail for a job. A job is presented one as a title, including the internal agency job number, its current state, the primary borrower or primary defendant, depending on whether it's a debt collection job or a process service job, and the client that requested that job to be undertaken. The job information is displayed in tabs. The general, borrower's, contract, ledger, notes and attachments tabs apply for debt collection jobs. Within the general tab, it provides general information on the job, including contact information, status information, dates that are relevant to the job, information such as the region the job's associated with, and special instructions. The ability for the current user to modify fields depends on who they are and what jobs they're responsible for. For example, all the items in grey can't be edited by the currently logged in client contact, as only agency personnel can modify these once a job has been defined. When creating new jobs, the client contact has more scope to define the individual fields. But after the original job creation, the authorization levels change. Some aspects of the general tab that client contacts can modify include the region that the job is associated with, special instructions from the client contact to the agency. Now, this particular special instructions field is probably best left for instructions that are important for the job as a whole, that stay constant across the entire job lifetime, while more time-oriented instructions should be put into notes. The Borrowers tab contains a list of all of the borrowers associated with this particular job. As in this case, there's only one borrower, and so that is automatically the primary borrower. I'll just flick to the other jobs on the left here and see if one of those has multiple. Yeah, this one has multiple borrowers, and you notice that the primary borrower button is now enabled. This allows authorized personnel to change who the primary borrower is. Okay, I'll flip back to the job I just was at for Michael Ball, and for each of the borrowers, their name is defined, optionally their date of birth, their gender, and contact and identification information. In this particular example, there's an address and two phone numbers defined. Now, notice that now some of these toolbars are now no longer grey and inactive. They have a mixture of colours indicating they're active. So we can, for example, choose to add an email address, and if this particular contact has an email address, we can add that to the list, or an agent can add that to the list of contact mechanisms for that particular borrower. The type of contact mechanisms that can be added include phone numbers, fax numbers, pager number, an address, email as we just noted, a web address. A web address is probably more appropriate to organizations. As mentioned previously, there's a consistent way of handling both people and organizations throughout Iris Web. So you'll see this particular user interface, this particular screen type, used in various places, not just for borrowers and defendants. In addition, you can define identification information for a person or organization. An example of identification information is a driver's license, where you can type in the driver's license number, passport details. And that pretty much sums up the different contact mechanisms that are included. The contract tab defines information relating to the contract that the borrower has entered into, and there's overview information relating to the contract number, the type, who the creditor is, the debtor, contract start date, all this type of financial information. And then over here on the right is a list of the securities. And you click on the particular security to get the detailed information. So if we wanted to, say we were defining this job and we wanted to add another vehicle in the security list, click on this particular button and start typing in the security information. And in addition to vehicles, which contain vehicle information, you can also add arbitrary assets. When you add an arbitrary asset, you have to provide more descriptive information. For example, I don't know, say computer system, and then a serial number if it's applicable. And so the contract tab defines the broad financial contract information and the list of securities that relate to that contract. The ledger tab has three sub-tabs. The client ledger is the agency's understanding of the contract ledger at the current time. Because there is no direct business-to-business electronic interaction at a fine-grained level between agencies and financiers, Iris Web can only store the state of the contract ledger that the client last provided, and so this grid defines that known state. Subsequently, any collections that the agency made can be entered into this agency ledger. So the combination of the information supplied by the client, which is in the client ledger, and the recorded collections made by the agency allows the agency to produce an indication of what the current arrears are. And included in that are the job costs incurred to date by the agency. The Notes tab defines notes made by either the client or the agency relating to this job. This particular job has no notes, so I'll just do a quick search for one that has existing notes. Here's an example of one. So, as with all information in this screencast, the information is made up. So all of the names and all the job numbers, etc., they're effectively randomized. And with the notes, we've just put in a lorem ipsum generator, which is basically gibberish, just to provide indication that the text can be in there, but we haven't provided any meaningful notes for this demonstration. So in this demonstration job, there are 3 notes being made at various dates, and this particular notes grid is not editable, but just shows all the notes current on the job. And you can double click on one of the notes entries to view the detail for the note, and if you had authorization, modify the note. Now to go back to the notes grid, just click on the Show All Notes button. Now different Iris Web users can then themselves add notes. For example, there's no tooltip for that button. We'll have to resolve that. And this creates a new note, and you notice the user entry is LV for Lucy Voigt, being the persona I'm currently using in this demo. And the client contact can then add note information instructing the agency to perform tasks or documenting a status change for the job. And when you're editing notes, you can say add a note and go back to Show All Notes. And for example, now the note's been added to the list, and Lucy can then go back and add some more information. Now, the way the Iris note system works is that the editor of a note, who originally produced the note, can modify the note for a short period after it's been added. It varies depending on the configuration of the Iris server, but after a period of time, the note can't be changed except via Iris system administrators. So if you get into a situation where you wanted to change a note that you edited yesterday, for example, you won't be authorized to make that change. You'll have to add a new note defining the job status change. Now, other users can't modify the notes that you've created other than the Iris system administrator. The last tab for debt collection jobs is the Attachments tab, and this just lists a series of files that have been attached to that job containing useful information, e.g. instructions or reports, images, etc. I'll flip back to this particular job because most of the jobs here are just most of the attachments in this demonstration are just dummy attachments. They don't actually exist. I've attached this particular file previously to illustrate how you can view attachments. So to view attachments, you just double click on the attachment. Now, with internet browser technology currently, there's a series of protection systems in place to protect internet users from malicious websites, etc. So when the Iris Web application requested that the PDF that I just double-clicked get sent to the browser user, the browser picked that up and displayed this yellow bar at the top, indicating that it's not sure that this particular website, the Iris Web website, should be downloading files to your computer, and it wants your permission to download the file. So to allow this, all you have to do is click on this yellow area and select Download File. Now, with Internet Explorer 7, this is now an instruction to the browser that you trust the Iris Web website. So now if I double-click this again, it'll go straight to the dialog that allows you to download or view the attachment. Now, that yellow bar is only required to be handled once in every Iris Web session. So if I continue to use Iris Web on this browser session, I won't have to deal with that yellow bar again. But if I close it down and come back again in a few minutes or an hour or so, that yellow bar will appear the first time you double click on an attachment. So once you have double clicked and get the dialog, you can either choose to save it to your local disk or just directly open it. And opening it launches the application that attachment is associated with and displays it. In this case, it's Adobe Reader for the PDF display. And this is an example of a worksheet generated for this dummy demonstration job. And this particular worksheet would be downloaded by the agent working on the job. Now, if you wanted to upload attachments as opposed to download attachments, you can click on this Add Attachment toolbar button, and this dialog appears, and you can add the files you want to attach to this particular job. So I'll click on Add. It shows me a local file system browser, and I know that my files are in the demo directory, and I'll just do this sample. So I've got this instruction I want to upload to this particular job. I just double click on the attachment, it adds it to the list. You can add multiple, and when I'm ready to start the upload, I press OK, and it uploads the document to the web server and then associates it with this particular job. So now if I double click on the attachment, wrong one, hang on. Okay, that's a slight bug that looks like we'll have to resolve. So if you get the wrong file on a double click, just reselect the file you're interested in again. So now I've double clicked the recently uploaded contract instruction document, and I can view it. So this is an example, and there's no actual content to it, but there's an example of how an agent can log into Iris and download and print the instructions that are related to the jobs that they're working on. Now, in this particular example, Lucy is a client contact within a client that doesn't share jobs across its client contacts. That's the way this particular finance company that Lucy works for, Smith Finance, has instructed the agency to set up their system, or their access to the agency system. Now, Alternatively, you can get the client contacts to share jobs. So I'll just provide an example of that by logging out as Lucy and logging in as Joseph. See if we get the password right. Did get the password right. Okay, so now I've logged in as Joseph, and he works for a different client organization called Example Financier. And if you notice now, if we click on the person list for the Example Financier client, Joseph can see other client contacts that work for the same financier in his jobs list. So if we click on, say, Barbara, Joseph, who's currently logged in, can view Barbara's jobs, and that just helps in interaction between staff within the client financier. And in addition, you can look at all jobs that are currently being worked on for that particular client by the agency running the Iris web server. And when the Find Jobs functionality is requested, the find action is performed across all of those jobs. So, for example, searching on snow, searches for snow, the word snow, in all jobs that are currently active or closed for the client that Joseph works for. Okay, clients and agency staff can add new jobs or create new jobs. This is done via the File menu option, and the type of job that's going to be created is then selected from the list. So let's just create a field call. It creates a new job, assigns it a job number, assigns the client contact for the job to be the person that's currently logged in, and assigns the client for the job to be the financier that the client contact works for. Then all of the fields that the client contact is authorized to edit can then be modified. At this point, they're all the default values. As this is a version 1 of the Iris Web product, if you are a client contact that feel you need to be able to specify information that's currently disabled for modification for you, just let your agency contact know which fields you're interested in, and we can look at modifying the functionality to suit. Okay, so typically you'd then add a borrower. Maybe specify their gender, possibly specify their date of birth, and then contact information, so their address, phone number, etc. Let's add another borrower. You can also add a borrower organization. So if the party that's involved in the contract isn't an individual but an organization, so say Fred runs Fred's Excavating, notice now that since it's an organization, these fields are no longer relevant, and then have an address for, say, the organization, being a company, trust, or whatever. And then we can set the primary borrower. looks like Fred is the primary borrower. So say we wanted to change the borrower to the company, primary borrower to the company, we can click on the button. The Fres excavating isn't appearing here. That's an issue to be resolved. Let me see if I can just flick back. No. Next time we come into this particular tab, Fres excavating will be in that list. Okay, so once you define the borrowers, you can define the contract information, start dates, contract values, etc., and start adding the securities that are relevant. Etc. And then maybe adding notes. So obviously this can be done at any time. And so once that's entered, it'll be listed as unassigned in the jobs list for, say, Joseph, the client contact, and the agency staff can then pick that up as a job that's been created but not assigned to any agent for further work, then assign it to an agent and move the job along in its life cycle. Okay, so that'll pretty much wrap it up for this particular screencast. We'll be aiming to create more screencasts to document the functionality as we go along. One last area to cover is the About box. If you go to Help About, the version number information is displayed there. IrisWeb is quite a new product, so we'll be making improvements, adding functionality, making fixes as we go along. If you find issues with IrisWeb, just let us know. If you can email support@talksoftware.com, it'll be useful to let us know what version you're running, maybe even a copy of the log that was created during your session. But in addition, if IrisWeb encounters an error, we will be emailed with some error information. But even with that error information, we still need to know a bit more about what you're doing at the time the problem occurred. So I'll just simulate an error scenario here, which is a known fault, but doesn't actually affect normal operation. So I'm going to type in an erroneous web page, and the type of error that occurs and the type of error display that occurs is this screen. It basically indicates an internal error has occurred, and it will automatically emails Iris support. And Iris support, if you have a look down the bottom left there, is support@talksoftware.com. If you get this error, you can either just go back and retry the operation or go on with other work, or close the browser down and restart it. This concludes this IrisWeb screencast. We covered logging in as a client contact. There are other roles that can log into the IrisWeb application, and these will be covered in future webcasts. We look forward to improving the IrisWeb functionality in future versions. Thank you.